I am asked this question every day in my practice. What is probate? People have a lot of misconceptions and inaccurate information about what is probate, but let me explain it to you through the use of some examples. Assume for a moment that I have a bank account. It's titled in my name only, and something unfortunate happens to me and I die. The question becomes, who is entitled to receive that bank account that I left behind? Well, let's assume that my wife walks into the bank and says, well, I'm married to David. I'm entitled to take the bank account. The bank is going to look at her and say, I'm sorry, we need some other documentation or verification before we can be confident that you're the person that's entitled to receive the account. So one of the purposes of probate is to establish who is entitled to take my account. So from the bank's perspective, they want some verification. They want some independent verification. If my wife were to walk into the bank with a copy of my will or the original of my will, and it shows that she's to receive the account, the bank's going to say, well, how do we know that's really the valid will and that's the last will that David made? So they're not going to accept my will either. But what they will accept is a document from the court that says who is entitled to take that account and who is entitled to control that account until it can be distributed to the person that is entitled to receive it. That's the purpose of probate. So probate is a legal process by which a deceased person's assets are ultimately transferred to the person or persons who is or are entitled to receive those assets. The actual process of probate can take some time. The first step is to file the appropriate documents with the court, setting forth the fact that I am deceased, who is entitled to be the person to take control of the accounts for administration purposes. That person in Arizona is called a personal representative. In other jurisdictions, you may hear the term executor or executrix or some other term. But in Arizona, it's personal representative. The personal representative receives a document from the court that specifically authorizes the personal representative to take control of my assets, including that bank account, and then administer it according to what is required under probate. There are several steps to probate, one of which is to publish a notice or to provide a notice to persons who have an interest in my estate. And those persons would be my heirs, which would be my wife, assuming I'm married, my children, if I have children. And if I leave a will, the persons who are named in the will to receive my assets when the administration of the probate is completed. So the personal representative publishes a notice in the paper, and it's called Notice to Creditors. And the purpose of that notice is to advise individuals or businesses that I may owe money to, that they need to present a claim to my personal representative so that they can get that claim paid. So one of the purposes of probate is to see that any debts that I leave outstanding, that they are taken care of. Another purpose of probate is to provide my beneficiaries or my heirs a list of what assets are subject to probate. And let me give a caution here. Not all assets that I leave behind may be subject to probate, and that's a subject for a later discussion. But the example that I gave you about the bank account that is in my name only, and there is no beneficiary designated on that account, that is an asset that is potentially subject to probate. So the personal representative is charged with the responsibility of putting together a list of assets that are in my name only and that are subject to the probate. And then that list of assets has to be distributed to my beneficiaries if I leave a will, and to the heirs of my estate. The heirs would typically be my wife and my children, might be more remote relatives if I don't have a wife and children. After the inventory or the list of assets has been distributed, the personal representative is responsible for seeing that my final tax returns are taken care of, that my creditors' claims are paid. And then after that's done, then distribute the assets according to my will, or if I don't leave a will, according to rules that we have in Arizona about persons who die without a will. And those beneficiaries or those persons who would take, if I don't leave a will, would be my heirs as determined under Arizona law. And then once that's completed, then all of those steps are completed, then the probate is closed, the assets are distributed as I indicated, and the probate is concluded. Now, at the end of that probate, or before, if the account is distributed to my wife that I mentioned earlier, the $10,000 bank account, my wife can walk into the bank account with the document from the personal representative indicating that she is entitled to receive the account, and the bank will then honor her request and transfer the account over into her name. What I've given you is sort of an overview of what probate is. There are a lot of details in there that I've intentionally overlooked to make my explanation a little bit easier for you to understand. But that's the purpose of probate. And by the way, there are some limitations on when probate is necessary, even if I leave assets that are in my name only. And these will differ from state to state. And so I won't give them to you right now, but for certain small estates, and if my bank account of $10,000 was the only asset that is required to be probated, that would be a small estate in Arizona, and we would not have to open a probate. There are other shorter informal methods by which my wife could gain control of that account. But that's sort of an overview of what probate is, and I hope it's helpful to you.